Chapter 7. Till Morning. He'd been dreaming of fire, a swirling maelstrom raging all around him. He felt it inside his body, beneath his eyelids, running up his veins, shrieking along his nerves. He fell through it, his skin sizzling away, his muscles burning, his bones melting. And then, he opened his eyes in the dark. He lay in a bed, the sheets twisted around him, sodden with sweat. He sat up, shaking all over. He felt feverish, nauseous, his head spun. Ripping back the blankets, he leaned over the edge of the bed and vomited onto the floor. It all came flooding back, a mess of images, Ray crashing to the floor, Ernley and Krista's gleaming faces, the Noctura, heat, fire. He staggered out of bed, his eyes slowly adjusting to the dark. His throat ached with thirst, and the air was biting cold on his damp skin. At some point he'd lost the bandage on his nose, and he could taste dried blood. A sliver of light came in through a crack under the door. He crossed the room to it, his legs wobbly and unsure. Halfway across he slammed his toes into something hard and nearly collapsed. Pulling himself upright, he limped the rest of the way. He fumbled for the doorknob, grasped it, and turned. Light smashed his retina. He shielded his eyes with his hands, feeling again like he might throw up. When the shock had faded, he squinted through his fingers. He looked to be on the upper landing of a mansion. Dark wood paneling, dark wood balustrade, dark wood armoires and tables and chairs. A row of portraits lined the wall behind two curving staircases that descended to the first floor. Of them Mitsue caught only a sense: pale faces, rich garments, mountains of curling hair. A red glass chandelier hung from the ceiling, its shape like leaping flames, lit from within by dozens of gas lanterns. Everywhere was seen the double helix, shaped into the golden frames of the portraits, stitched into the tapestries that bedecked the walls. Even the two staircases branched apart from the second landing, only to weave back together on the first. The front door was open in the foyer below, and as Mitsue watched, two men staggered through, supporting a third man between them. All three wore black uniforms trimmed with red. The man in the middle seemed to be nearly unconscious. Blood ran from his lips and eyes, and his right arm was bent at an oblique angle. Mitsue moved along the hallway aided by the railing. His legs trembled with the effort. More people were streaming in and out through the door, grim-faced, some bleeding, some on stretchers, all dressed in the same hooded black uniform slashed with red. Kindlers, Mitsue knew, recognizing the design from his nightmares. Not one of the kindlers noticed him, hobbling along above them. They spoke and shouted to one another, conversed in low whispers. He caught only snippets of what they were saying. A loud staccato clicking was coming from somewhere beneath him, like a million scuttling insects, the noise staggering all other sound and breaking his concentration. Mitsue paused at the top of the staircase, unsure of what to do. Ray. He needed to find her. Nothing else mattered, not now. He eased himself down the first step, then the next, the wood cool against his bare feet. At the bottom of the staircase he turned left towards the clicking and passed into what ordinarily might have been a dining room, though the usual furniture had been removed. In its place, two long wooden tables had been set parallel, a narrow aisle allowing movement between them. 10 kindlers sat side by side at each table, a small black metal device in front of each one, headphones connected by a wire to the device, covering their ears. The device looked almost like a typewriter, except it had only one metal key in the center. As the operators pressed the key, the device would emit the clicking sound Mitsue had heard, and a gout of fire would leap from the top. The operators jot down notes on paper or else tapped into their machines a measured cadence. "Lieutenant Colonel Flynn!" a young, brown-haired man shouted, jumping to his feet from his place at the left table, his glasses almost flying off his face. He caught a hold of them and straightened them before continuing. 174th Company is calling for reinforcements." A black-haired woman with deep shadows beneath her eyes strode down the aisle towards him. "Losses?" she asked. "They've been almost wiped out, ma'am. They're falling back to Amory Bridge." "That will leave us wide open here," the woman said, rubbing her chin contemplatively. "What is Orson doing?" she asked, almost to herself. "Orders, ma'am?" "Tell Orson I'm going out with the reserves. I'll make for District 3. Thurman, you're in charge until my return." "Yes, ma'am," Thurman called, striding forward from the rear of the room. "You can't," the young man with glasses entreated, stepping out from behind the table. "District 3 is where we've suffered the worst casualties. It's too dangerous." At this, Flynn gave him a scathing look. one which would have stripped the finish from an automobile. The young man blanched. "Well, you see, what I meant was—" Flynn cut him off. "It doesn't matter what you meant, First Lieutenant Clyde. I'm in charge here. When I give you an order, you obey. No hesitation, no questions." She jabbed a finger at his chest. "We are on the razor's edge now. Do or die. I don't need soldiers who can't follow orders. So I'll only ask you this once. Can you follow orders?" "Yes, ma'am," Clyde saluted stiffly. "Then send the message. Now." Beaten, Clyde sidled back to his spot at the table and commenced clicking his device. Flynn snapped at a man and woman standing at the far end of the room. "Donnelly, Merritt, you're with me. I want what's left of the reserve ready in 5. They both saluted. Flynn watched them leave the room, her eyes passing over Mitsue before snapping back. She prowled towards him. "What are you doing here, boy?" she asked. Mitsue balked. He hadn't expected to be seen, let alone addressed. Walking among the wounded soldiers, no one sparing a glance in his direction, he'd felt almost invisible. Now it were as if a spotlight had turned towards him, paling him into existence. Every kindler in the room was looking at him. He sputtered, then finding his voice said, I don't know, ma'am," he added. Flynn wrinkled her forehead. She opened her mouth to speak, but Clyde, the kindler with the glasses, leapt to his feet. "That's the boy." "What boy?" she growled, excoriating Mitsue with her gaze. "One of the ones Marcus found." "I don't have time for this," she said, turning her back on Mitsue and marching down the aisle. "Wait, ma'am, please," Mitsue intoned. He didn't know what to say. There were so many questions he wanted to ask. Where was he? What was going on? But mostly he needed to find Ray. "I was with 3 others. A girl, Ray—" Flynn didn't wait for him to finish. "Clyde, did you get that message out?" she snapped. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Get him out of here." "Ma'am." Clyde saluted and bounded to his feet. He made his way towards Mitsue, nearly losing his balance when he tripped over a chair leg.